Welcome back everyone to Data Science for Everyone. Today we're going to be talking about data collection with observations. Let's get started. So observations are carried out in order to provide evidence of the here and now to discover how people behave and interact in particular situations. An observation can be seen as a direct and stated technique of data collection, not as a casual observation of the activity taking place. In this sense, the observation needs to be designed, constructed, and implemented as you would any other data collection instrument. Human memory is extremely selective. Even the most experienced observer needs some form of aid to counteract the possibility of selective remembering. Five dimensions of variation in the approaches to observation: the role of the observer, portrayal of that role to others, portrayal of the purpose of the research, duration of the observations, and focus of the observations. The five dimensions provide a useful framework for discussing your option choices when considering how to observe, your role in the process of observing, and what to observe. The fundamental distinction that differentiates observational strategies concerns the extent to which the observer will be a participant in the setting being studied. The level to which the researcher becomes involved and immersed in the context is one of the central debates surrounding observation. There are two main arguments. If you become too involved with you will lose your objectivity. But who is to say that objectivity is the desired condition in your research? Sometimes it is the tact knowledge of the researcher that allows for a more in-depth understanding of the situation. The more involved you are, the more insight you may be able to bring to the analysis. Two, it is impossible to observe as a complete outsider and not influence the situation. Now, this is true. People behave differently when being watched. The best way to minimize any impact the observer has on the context is to become as interesting as wallpaper or a fly on the wall, so to speak. Yeah, this is easier said than done. There are three basic choices. Are you going to be a participant observer, a semi-participant observer, or a non-participant observer? The debate about the researcher being an insider or an outsider is always going to continue. There are sound arguments on both sides. It is up to you to decide which is the best role to assume for the purpose of your research, and then to attempt to engage in your data collection in a systematic and structured manner, gathering evidence, processing and analyzing that evidence, then interpreting what you find. Observation is real, and as in any real situation, things will happen that are out of your control at the outset. You will have to think on your feet and react in a way that you will feel is appropriate. A participant observer shares as intimately as possible in the lives and activities of setting under study in order to develop an insider view of what has happened. The presence of any observer in a situation is highly likely to influence a situation to some degree, but the same can be said of any data collection method. The aim is to limit the impact and keep the situation as close to natural as possible. Semi-participant observation depends on the researcher being able to visit a location a number of occasions and over an extended period of time. As time goes on, the initial impact of the researcher on the situation will diminish, but will never go away completely. Being able to interact with the research subjects enables the researcher to build a rapport and makes the subjects feel more comfortable being watched. This type of observation requires the researcher to be as interesting as wallpaper and have nothing at all to do with the setting being observed. You watch, record, and later interpret what you will have seen in the context of your research question. You are a passive observer, makes no attempt to access the context. The extent to which participants are informed that they are being observed and are told the purpose of the research ranges from full disclosure to no disclosure, with a great deal of variation in between. This is a particularly sensitive issue There is a great deal of disagreement among researchers as the ethical and moral obligations facing the observer. The researcher has to decide how much detail to share with research participants. In many cases, there may be and may not be too much concern about the intricate planning details of the study, but at the very least, they will want to know why you are watching and maybe even what you're looking for. The duration of the observation should be determined in the planning stages. This includes both the length of individual observations and the duration of the fieldwork. How long will you be watching and how often will you be watching? These two decisions depend very much on the nature and purpose of the observation. It is important that you build this into your research design, not least so that you can inform your research participants, but also so that you can schedule field work and analysis. While observing any situation, it is important to maintain the greatest level of normality possible. The researcher taking copious notes in front of research participants will not help this. If observations are scheduled to last 30 minutes to 1 hour, then they should be timetabled as a 2-hour session exercise to allow you to write up your field notes as soon as you leave the setting. The field notes are descriptive, not interpretive, and this accounts of the phenomenon that you see. It is necessary to allow data collection procedures to cut you off from access to additional data you need. There are a number of ways to do this. One is to enter the setting with a briefing sheet, a list of behaviors or activities that you want to record, or simply a checklist. Observations are common data collection techniques in many disciplines. Ethnography is based almost entirely on observation. Case studies can rely heavily on observation. Laboratory experiments use observation. It is also a useful technique in surveys and action research. The nature and form of the observation will vary greatly depending on the research method and the research question. It is important that you do not underestimate the difficulty of this technique. If you guys like this video, please comment, subscribe, and hit that like button. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.